Princess Zara stood at the tall windows of her palace tower and looked out at the crystal city below. The morning sun made the buildings shine like diamonds, but she felt no joy in the beauty. Her people were dying, and she could do nothing to stop it. The Vorthak Empire had ruled this part of space for thousands of years. Her ancestors had built great ships that traveled between stars and created cities that floated in space. They had made peace with dozens of alien races and brought order to chaotic worlds. But now their time was ending. Zara touched the crystal pendant around her neck. It had belonged to her mother and her grandmother and all the queens before them. Soon there would be no one left to wear it. The royal bloodline was broken and could not be fixed. 200 years had passed since any member of the royal family had given birth to a child. The best doctors and scientists in the empire had tried everything they could think of. They had used machines that could see inside living bodies and medicines made from rare plants found on distant worlds. Nothing worked. The genetic sickness that made them unable to have children seemed to get stronger with each generation. Zara was 28 years old and already considered too old by many in her court. Her younger brother had died in a flying accident 3 years ago. Her cousins had all tried to have children and failed. She was the last hope for her family and her people, but hope was fading fast. A soft chime told her that someone wanted to enter her room. She turned away from the window and straightened her silver robes. "Come in," she said. Her advisor, Keth, walked through the door. He was old, even by Vorthak standards, and his crystal skin had turned almost white with age. He had served her father and grandfather before that. Now he served her with the same loyalty, even though they both knew her reign might be the last. "Princess, the human delegation has arrived," Keth said with a respectful bow. "They request an audience with you this afternoon." Zara nodded. She had heard about these humans from reports sent by other alien races. They were a young species that had only recently learned to travel between stars. Most advanced civilizations ignored new races until they proved themselves worthy of attention. But the humans were different. They seemed to make friends wherever they went. "What do we know about them?" Zara asked. "They come from a world they call Earth in a small system near the edge of our territory. They have been in space for less than 100 of their years, but they have already made contact with 12 different species. All reports say they are peaceful but curious." "Curious about what?" "Everything, it seems. They ask many questions about culture and history and science. They seem to want to learn rather than conquer or trade." Zara found this interesting. Most species that contacted the Vorthak Empire wanted something specific: mining rights or trade agreements or military protection. Few bothered to learn about Vorthak culture or history. "How many are in their delegation?" "Only 3. Their captain is a man named Jake Morrison. He is young by their standards, but his crew speaks well of him. The other 2 are a doctor named Lisa Martinez and a cultural specialist named Kevin Brooks." "Only 3 people to represent their entire world?" Humans seem to believe in giving authority to individuals rather than large committees. Their captain can make decisions without asking permission from his government. Zara walked back to the window. In the distance, she could see the landing platform where alien ships came and went. A small silver vessel sat there now. It looked simple compared to the grand ships that usually visited the Empire, but it was clean and well-maintained. "Schedule the meeting for this afternoon," she said. "I am curious about these humans." That afternoon, Zara sat on her crystal throne in the formal audience chamber. The room was designed to impress visitors with its high ceiling and walls that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Most aliens who entered seemed small and nervous in such a grand space. The human captain walked in, and Zara immediately noticed something different about him. He looked around the room with interest rather than fear or awe. When his eyes met hers, he smiled and gave a respectful nod, but did not seem overwhelmed by her presence. Jake Morrison was taller than she had expected and moved with easy confidence. His dark hair was neat but not formal, and his uniform was practical, rather than decorated with medals or symbols of rank. He looked like someone who worked with his hands as much as his mind. "Princess Zara," he said in carefully pronounced Vorthak language. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I am honored to represent Earth and humanity in first contact with your empire. You speak our language well for someone who has only recently learned it," Zara replied. Jake smiled again. "I had good teachers on the journey here. Your people, who work with the Galactic Trade Council, were very patient with my pronunciation. Most aliens find our language difficult. The sound patterns are very different from most species. Different is interesting, not difficult. At least that is how we see it on Earth. We have hundreds of different languages on our world, so we are used to learning new ways to communicate." Zara tilted her head slightly. This was not the formal diplomatic speech she usually heard from visiting aliens. Jake Morrison talked to her like she was a person he wanted to get to know rather than a powerful ruler he needed to impress. "Tell me about your world," she said. "What makes humans different from other species we have encountered?" Jake thought for a moment. "I think what makes us different is that we adapt quickly to new situations. Our world has many different environments and climates. Humans learn to live in hot deserts and cold mountains and everywhere in between. We learned that different does not mean dangerous. And this helps you make contact with alien species?" "We think so. When we meet someone new, we try to understand their way of thinking instead of expecting them to think like us. Every species has something valuable to teach if we are willing to learn." Zara found herself leaning forward slightly. She had spoken with hundreds of alien diplomats over the years. Most followed careful scripts prepared by their governments. They spoke about trade and treaties and mutual benefit. Jake Morrison spoke about learning and understanding and seemed genuinely interested in her as a person. "What would you like to learn about the Vorthak Empire?" she asked. "Everything," Jake said with enthusiasm. "Your people have achieved things that humans can barely imagine. Cities that float in space. Ships that can cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years. Art and music and literature that has influenced dozens of other species. But most of all, I would like to understand how you think about the universe and your place in it." For the first time in months, Zara felt something that might have been hope. Not for her family or her bloodline, but for something new and unexpected. These humans seemed to offer friendship without asking for anything in return. In a universe where every relationship was based on what each side could gain, that was remarkable indeed. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived, and Jake Morrison had become a regular visitor to the palace. Unlike other diplomatic guests who stayed in formal quarters and only appeared for scheduled meetings, Jake seemed to enjoy exploring the Crystal City and talking with ordinary Vorthak citizens. Zara watched from her balcony as Jake walked through the market district below. He stopped at food stalls to try strange alien dishes and visited craft shops where artisans made jewelry from living crystal. The people seemed to like him. Children followed him around asking questions about his strange, smooth skin and the way his face changed expression so easily. He is not like other aliens, Keth observed as he joined Zara on the balcony. No, he is not, Zara agreed. Yesterday he spent 2 hours helping old Vex repair his shop sign. He did not have to do that. It gained him nothing. Perhaps that is exactly why he did it. Zara had been thinking the same thing. Jake Morrison seemed to help people simply because he could. When she asked him about human culture, he told her stories about neighbors helping neighbors and strangers becoming friends. It sounded almost too good to be true, but she was beginning to believe it might be real. That afternoon, Jake arrived for their usual meeting, but this time he looked troubled. Instead of his normal cheerful greeting, he sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. "Something is bothering you," Zara said. Jake looked up at her with surprise. "How did you know? Humans are not as hard to read as they think they are. Your face shows your emotions very clearly. What is wrong?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Dr. Martinez received a message from our government today. They want us to return to Earth soon. They think we have learned enough about your empire for now." Zara felt a strange disappointment. She had grown used to their daily conversations. Jake asked thoughtful questions about Vorthak history and philosophy. He listened to her ideas about art and science without trying to change her mind or prove her wrong. No one had ever done that before. "When will you leave?" "In 1 week, unless something important happens to extend our mission. I see." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Jake said, "Princess, can I ask you a personal question?" Zara hesitated. Royal protocol did not allow for personal questions from foreign visitors. But Jake had never followed protocol anyway, and she found she did not want him to start now. "You may ask." "You seem sad often. Not just today, but since we first met. Is it something I can help with?" Zara looked at this strange human who offered help without even knowing what the problem was. In her world, people only offered help when they knew they could benefit from it. But Jake seemed sincere. "My people are dying," she said quietly. Jake leaned forward with concern. "Dying? I saw no signs of plague or disease in the city. Not from sickness, from something else, something we cannot fix." Zara found herself telling Jake about the genetic problem that had made her family unable to have children. She told him about 2 centuries of trying and failing, about watching her bloodline slowly disappear. Jake listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I am sorry," he said finally. "That must be a terrible burden for you to carry alone. It is my duty as the last of the royal line." "Maybe it does not have to be your burden alone." Before Zara could ask what he meant, Jake stood up. "Princess, I need to talk with Dr. Martinez about something. May I see you tomorrow?" The next day, Jake returned with Dr. Martinez and Kevin Brooks. The doctor was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She spoke Vorthak with a funny accent, but her words were clear. "Princess Zara," Dr. Martinez said, "Captain Morrison told us about your family's situation. We would like to offer our help." "I do not understand. How could humans help with a Vorthak genetic problem?" "Maybe we cannot," Jake said. "But we would like to try. On Earth, we have learned that sometimes an outside view can see solutions that people close to a problem cannot see." Dr. Martinez opened a small device that projected images into the air. "We have been studying genetic patterns from many different species since we began space travel. What we have found is very interesting." The images showed complex patterns of genetic code from dozens of alien races. Zara had seen similar displays from her own scientists many times. Every species we have studied has genetic markers that make them compatible only with their own kind, Dr. Martinez continued. But humans are different. Our genetic code has unusual flexibility. What does that mean? It means human genetic material can adapt to work with other species in ways we do not fully understand yet. We have seen signs of this in laboratory tests, but we have never tried it with a living subject. Zara stared at the genetic patterns, floating in the air. Are you saying that human and Vorthak genetics might be compatible? We do not know, Dr. Martinez admitted. But we would like to find out if you will let us try. The testing would be completely safe, Jake added quickly. Just genetic samples analyzed in a laboratory. No risk to anyone. Zara looked at the three humans sitting in her private study. They were offering to help solve a problem that the best Vorthak scientists had given up on. They asked for nothing. In return, accept permission to try. Why would you do this? She asked. Jake smiled. Because you are our friend, and friends help each other when they can. Even if helping me means nothing for your people or your mission? Especially then. 3 days later, Zara stood in the Royal Medical Center watching Dr. Martinez work with Vorthak scientists. The humans had brought their own equipment, but they shared everything freely with the Vorthak researchers. There was no competition or secrecy, just people from different worlds working together. The initial tests were simple. Small samples of genetic material from both species were mixed together in laboratory conditions. Zara did not understand most of what she saw, but the excitement on Dr. Martinez's face was clear. This is remarkable, the human doctor said to Dr. Yelshan, the head Vorthak researcher. Look at how the human genetic markers are adapting to match Vorthak patterns. I have never seen anything like it, Dr. Yelshan replied. The human material is not just compatible, it is actively repairing damage in the Vorthak samples. Jake stood beside Zara as they watched the scientists work. What are they saying? They think it might actually work, Zara said quietly. Human genetics might be able to fix what is broken in mine. And how do you feel about that? Zara looked at Jake. His question was simple, but the answer was complicated. For the first time in her life, she felt real hope that her family line might continue. But she also felt something else, something she had not expected. She felt drawn to this human who had offered to help her without asking for anything in return. Jake Morrison had shown her a kind of friendship she had never experienced. He treated her like a person rather than a princess. He listened to her thoughts and respected her opinions. He made her laugh with stories about his strange home world, where people lived in cities that stayed on the ground and oceans that were made of water instead of crystal. I feel hopeful, she said, and grateful, and something else I am not sure I understand. Jake looked at her with those expressive human eyes. What? I feel like I do not want you to leave when your mission is over. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I was thinking the same thing. 6 months had passed since the genetic testing began, and the results were better than anyone had dared to hope. Dr. Martinez and Dr. Yelshan had confirmed that human genetic material could indeed repair the damage that had made the Vorthak royal family unable to have children. But the solution required more than just laboratory mixing of genetic samples. Jake had requested extended diplomatic status so he could stay on the Vorthak homeworld. His government on Earth had agreed after receiving reports about the potential for a major alliance with one of the galaxy's oldest empires. But Jake knew his real reason for staying had nothing to do with diplomacy. He was in love with Princess Zara. It had happened slowly over weeks of daily conversations and shared meals and long walks through the crystal gardens. Zara was brilliant, and kind and funny in ways that surprised him constantly. She asked questions about everything and remembered every answer. She treated everyone from servants to nobles with equal respect. She worked harder than anyone else in the palace to serve her people, even though they could give her nothing in return except their loyalty. Jake had never met anyone like her on Earth or anywhere else. The problem was that loving an alien princess was complicated in ways he had never imagined. Both of their governments were watching their relationship carefully. The Vorthak court was divided between those who saw Jake as a potential savior for their royal bloodline and those who saw him as a dangerous outsider who threatened their traditions. On Earth, some people were excited about the first human to fall in love with an alien, while others worried about the genetic experiments and what they might mean for humanity's future. "The Council of Nobles wants to meet with you," Zara told Jake as they walked through her private garden. The crystal trees sang softly in the evening breeze, and the air smelled like flowers that had no names in any human language. "About the genetic compatibility results?" "About us," Zara said quietly. Jake stopped walking. They had been careful not to talk about their growing feelings for each other in public. Royal protocol and diplomatic procedure made personal relationships complicated, enough without adding the pressure of two entire civilizations watching every move they made. "What will you tell them?" "The truth. That I care about you more than I have ever cared about anyone. That you make me happy in ways I did not know were possible. That I want to spend my life with you if you will have me." Jake took her hands in his. Her crystal skin was warm and smooth, and felt somehow right against his fingers. "Zara, I love you. I have loved you for weeks, but I was afraid to say it because I did not want to make things harder for you with your people. And I love you, Jake Morrison from Earth. But loving each other and being together are two different things." They stood in silence among the singing trees. Both of them knew that their relationship was about more than just two people who had fallen in love. If they chose to be together, it would affect both of their species and potentially change the balance of power in their part of the galaxy. The next morning, Jake stood before the Vorthak Council of Nobles. The chamber was even more impressive than the throne room, with walls that rose up into shadows and seats carved from single pieces of living crystal. 12 of the most powerful Vorthak nobles sat in judgment of his relationship with their princess. "Captain Morrison," said Lord Vexthar, the eldest council member, "we understand that you and Princess Zara have developed personal feelings for each other." "That is correct, my lord. And we understand that your genetic material might be compatible with hers in ways that could allow our royal bloodline to continue. The tests suggest that is possible, yes. Then we must ask you a direct question. Do you intend to marry our princess?" Jake had been expecting this question, but it still caught him off guard. Marriage was a permanent commitment that would bind him to the Vorthak Empire for life. He would never be able to return to Earth as a normal human citizen. His children would be half alien and would face challenges that no human children had ever faced. But when he thought about Zara and the way she smiled when she saw him each morning, the answer was easy. If Princess Zara will have me, and if this council gives its blessing, then yes, I would be honored to marry her. The nobles whispered among themselves in the old formal version of Vorthak that Jake could not understand. Finally, Lord Vexthar spoke again. "There are those among us who believe that mixing our royal bloodline with alien genetics is wrong. They say it will weaken our people and destroy our traditions. And there are others," said Lady Chanel, "who believe that Captain Morrison represents our only hope for the future. Without him, our royal family dies, and our empire falls into chaos." "What do you believe, Captain Morrison?" Lord Vexthar asked. Jake thought carefully before answering. "I believe that love makes people stronger, not weaker. I believe that different species can learn from each other and become better together than they could alone. And I believe that Princess Zara would be a wonderful mother and a wise ruler, whether her children are fully Vorthak or something new. And if you marry her and your children are rejected by our people or by yours, then we will teach them to be proud of both their heritages and to make their own place in the universe." The council voted that same day. 8 nobles supported the marriage while 4 opposed it. It was enough for official approval, but Jake knew that not everyone would accept their decision. 3 days later, Jake received an angry message from a group of human politicians on Earth. They demanded that he end his relationship with Princess Zara and return home immediately. They said his actions were endangering humanity's reputation with other alien species and setting a dangerous precedent for future contact missions. Jake deleted the message without answering it. The wedding was planned for 2 months later to give both governments time to send official representatives. It would be the first marriage between a human and a member of an alien royal family. News services across the galaxy reported on every detail of the preparation, but not everyone was celebrating. A radical group of Vorthak nobles calling themselves the Pure Blood Alliance began making threats against Jake and anyone who supported the marriage. On Earth, an organization called Humanity First demanded that their government arrest Jake for treason when he returned. "Maybe we should wait," Zara said one evening as they reviewed security reports about more threats. "Let things calm down before we make this permanent." "Do you want to wait?" Jake asked. "No, I want to marry you tomorrow if possible. But I do not want you to be hurt because of me. And I do not want you to be hurt because of me. But if we let fear make our choices, then we will never be happy." Jake took her hands and looked into her golden crystal eyes. "Zara, I know this is complicated and dangerous and maybe crazy. But I also know that I love you, and you love me, and together we can handle whatever comes next." The night before the wedding, Jake could not sleep. He walked out onto the balcony of his guest quarters and looked up at the alien stars. Tomorrow, he would become the first human to marry into an alien royal family. His children would be citizens of 2 worlds and 2 species. He would spend the rest of his life learning to be a good husband to someone whose people were older than human civilization. It should have been terrifying, but instead, he felt peaceful. Somewhere in the palace, Zara was probably not sleeping either. Tomorrow they would stand together in front of representatives from dozens of worlds and promise to love each other for the rest of their lives. Jake smiled as he watched the crystal city sparkle in the starlight. He had come here as a diplomat, trying to make first contact with an alien empire. Instead, he had found something much more valuable. He had found home. The wedding ceremony had been beautiful beyond anything Jake had ever imagined. Representatives from 30 different worlds had attended, including the first official Earth delegation to visit the Vorthak homeworld. Zara had worn robes made from living crystal that changed color with her emotions, while Jake wore a formal uniform that Dr. Martinez had designed to blend human and Vorthak styles. Now, 4 months later, they were settling into married life in a way that felt surprisingly normal despite the galaxy-wide attention their union continued to receive. Jake had moved into Zara's private quarters in the palace and was learning to navigate the complex world of Vorthak politics and court life. He served as an unofficial ambassador between Earth and the Vorthak Empire, while Zara continued her work as heir to the throne. In the evenings, they walked in the crystal gardens and talked about everything from art to philosophy to their hopes for the future. The future was what brought Dr. Martinez to their quarters on a quiet morning when Jake was teaching Zara to play chess using a board he had carved from local wood. "Princess Captain," Dr. Martinez said with barely contained excitement, "I need you both to come to the medical center immediately." "Is something wrong?" Zara asked, standing up quickly. "No, something is very right. But I want to run some tests before I say anything more." An hour later, Jake and Zara sat in the medical center waiting for test results. Dr. Martinez had taken blood samples and used various scanning devices, but had refused to explain what she was looking for. "The waiting is making me nervous," Zara said quietly. Jake reached for her hand. "Whatever it is, we will handle it together." Dr. Martinez returned with Dr. Yelshan, and both of them were smiling in a way that made Jake think of children with a wonderful secret. "Princess Zara," Dr. Martinez said carefully, "when was your last monthly cycle?" Zara thought for a moment. I'm not sure. Perhaps 6 weeks ago." "Why? And have you felt unusually tired or sick recently?" "Some mornings I feel a bit unwell, but I thought it was stress from all the political meetings." Dr. Martinez looked at Dr. Yelshan, who nodded encouragement. "Princess, you are pregnant. The words seemed to hang in the air like physical things. Jake felt like he could not breathe. Zara sat perfectly still with her mouth slightly open. "That is not possible," Zara whispered. "My family cannot have children. We have tried for 200 years. Human genetic material has changed that," Dr. Yelshan said gently. "The baby is definitely part human and part Vorthak. The combination has somehow repaired the genetic damage that prevented pregnancy." Jake found his voice. "Are you certain?" "Completely certain," Dr. Martinez said. "The pregnancy appears healthy and normal. The baby's genetics are stable and strong." Zara began to cry. Jake had never seen her cry before, and for a moment he was worried something was wrong. Then she looked at him, with tears streaming down her crystal cheeks, and smiled more brightly than any of the stars in the sky. "We are going to have a baby," she said. "We are going to have a baby," Jake repeated, still not quite believing it was real. The news spread through the palace within hours, despite their attempts to keep it quiet until they could make an official announcement. By evening, crowds had gathered outside the palace gates to celebrate. By the next morning, news reports were being broadcast on every world in the sector. The first human-alien hybrid pregnancy was the biggest story in the galaxy. Jake and Zara were sitting in their private study, trying to plan how to handle all. The attention when Keth arrived with urgent news. "Princess, we have received communications from the leaders of 17 different alien species. They all want to meet with Captain Morrison." "About what?" Jake asked. "About the possibility that human genetics might be able to help their people as well. It seems that genetic decline and fertility problems are much more common in the galaxy than anyone realized." Over the next weeks, Jake found himself in meetings with desperate representatives from worlds he had never heard of. The Zaloni people had not had a successful birth in 50 years. The Keth species was down to less than 1,000 individuals. The Morthan civilization was watching their population drop every year despite their advanced medical technology. All of them wanted to know if humans could help them the way Jake had helped Zara. "This is bigger than just us," Jake told Zara one evening as they reviewed requests for genetic testing from 12 different species. "Somehow humans have become the solution to a galaxy-wide fertility crisis that nobody even knew existed. How do you feel about that?" Jake was quiet for a long time. "Scared," he said finally. "What if we cannot help all these people? What if what happened with us was just luck?" "And what if it was not luck?" Zara asked. "What if this is something humans can actually do?" Dr. Martinez had been asking herself the same question. She was working with geneticists from dozens of worlds trying to understand exactly how human DNA was able to repair damage in other species. The preliminary results were promising but also confusing. Human genetics seemed to have an unusual ability to adapt and integrate with alien biology, she explained to Jake and Zara during one of their regular medical checkups. "We think it comes from your evolutionary history on Earth." "What do you mean?" Zara asked. "Earth has had several mass extinction events. Species that survived had to be extremely adaptable. Humans developed genetic flexibility as a survival trait. Now that flexibility is allowing human genetic material to work with alien species in ways that should be impossible. So Jake's people might be able to help other species have children. Not all species and not in all cases. But based on what we have seen so far, humans might be compatible with more alien races than any other known species." The implications were staggering. If humans could help restore fertility to dying civilizations, it would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Instead of being newcomers trying to find their place among ancient empires, humans would become the most valuable species in known space. But it also meant enormous responsibility and pressure. "Every day we get more requests for help," Jake told Zara as they felt their baby move for the first time. "Species that are facing extinction want us to save them. Governments want to make deals for genetic research. Scientists want to study human DNA. And what do you want?" Zara asked. Jake put his hand on her stomach where their child was growing. "I want to be a good father and a good husband. I want to help people when I can, but I do not want to be responsible for saving the entire galaxy." "Then we will figure out how to do both," Zara said firmly. "We will help who we can help, and we will raise our child to be proud of both their human and Vorthak heritage." As the pregnancy progressed, Jake and Zara found themselves becoming symbols of hope for species across the galaxy. Their baby represented proof that genetic decline could be reversed and that different species could work together to solve seemingly impossible problems. But they also faced new challenges. Some groups opposed to genetic mixing threatened violence. Others wanted to study their child like a laboratory specimen. A few extremist organizations claimed that human-alien hybrids would destroy the purity of all species. "The baby will be born into a complicated world," Zara said during one of their evening walks. "All babies are born into complicated worlds," Jake replied. "Our job is to love this child and teach them to be strong and kind and proud of who they are, even if who they are is something completely new." Jake stopped walking and pulled Zara close to him. "Especially if who they are is something completely new. That just means they get to help write the rules instead of following ones that somebody else made." 6 weeks before the baby was due to be born, Dr. Martinez made another surprising discovery. "Princess, Captain, I need to show you something from the latest scan." The medical imaging showed 2 distinct heartbeats and 2 separate forms growing inside Zara. "Twins?" Jake asked weakly. "Twins," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "One appears to be developing more along Vorthak lines while the other seems more human in structure. Both look perfectly healthy." Jake sat down heavily in the nearest chair. One baby had seemed like a miracle. 2 babies felt like the universe had decided to completely change the rules about what was possible. "How do you feel?" he asked Zara. Zara looked at the images of their children floating in the air above the medical scanner. After a moment, she began to laugh. "I feel like we are about to become very busy," she said. The birth of the twins changed everything. Princess Maya was born first with her mother's golden crystal skin, but her father's expressive eyes and curious nature. Prince Alex followed 20 minutes later, looking almost entirely human except for the slight shimmer in his skin that caught light in beautiful ways. Both babies were healthy and strong and absolutely perfect. Jake held his daughter while Zara cradled their son, and both parents cried happy tears as news of the successful birth spread across the galaxy. The first human-alien hybrid children had arrived and they were thriving. "They are so small," Jake whispered as Maya wrapped her tiny fingers around his thumb. "They are so beautiful," Zara said as Alex made soft cooing sounds that somehow seemed to combine human and Vorthak baby noises. Dr. Martinez ran every test she could think of and found that both children had inherited the best traits from both species. Maya had her mother's advanced intelligence and longevity combined with her father's emotional range and adaptability. Alex had his father's physical strength and curiosity, along with his mother's intuitive understanding of energy and crystal technology. More importantly, both children carried genetic markers that suggested they would be able to have children of their own when they grew up. The royal bloodline was not just saved, it was strengthened. Within days of the birth, Jake and Zara received messages of congratulation from leaders across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, which had never acknowledged humanity as more than a minor species, sent an official invitation for Earth to join as a full-member civilization. "They want to meet with you," Zara told Jake as she fed Maya while he rocked Alex to sleep. "The Council wants to discuss what they are calling the Human Genetic Initiative." "What does that mean?" "It means they want humans to help restore fertility to other species on an official basis. They are offering to make Earth a protected world and humanity a guardian species in exchange for genetic research cooperation." Jake looked down at his sleeping son. Alex had his father's dark hair, but when light hit his skin just right, it sparkled like stars. This tiny person was already changing the fate of entire civilizations just by existing. "What do you think we should do?" "I think we should be very careful," Zara said. "Power like this can be dangerous if it is used wrong." "Over,"